I cry 7 days a week. 7! My mind never stops. Never!
What happens when the most unhinged minds in history are finally forced to face justice? In Craziest Psycho Killers Reacting to Life Sentences, we uncover chilling cases and shocking courtroom moments that reveal the darkest depths of human behavior. One case, Jared Chance, stands out. A gruesome crime that defies logic and humanity. These reactions will leave you speechless. Let's begin.
A Class 1C felony, 45 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10.
On August 11, 2013, the bodies of Juan Uribe Pina and Jorge Caiga Ruiz were found in a pickup truck in Omaha, Nebraska. Based on the information the police gathered, they had been lured to the location with the promise of sexual encounters with 2 women. They were instead shot once in the head with a shotgun and their pockets were emptied. On August 19th, the body of Curtis Bradford was found with a shotgun wound to the back of his head. On August 21st, the body of Andrea Kruger was found with 4 gunshot wounds to her face, neck, and back. At first, it seemed that no one would be caught for these murders, or that these were not murders committed by one person. This was until Nico Jenkins was arrested for unrelated charges before evidence connected him to the murders of these 4 people. Nico Jenkins was born into a family that was well known to the police. Jenkins' family members had been arrested on different occasions for crimes ranging from assault to child harm to robbery. When Jenkins was just 7 years old, he brought a loaded handgun to school. When he was 17, he was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 18 years in prison. In 2009, Jenkins was let out of prison to attend his grandmother's funeral. At the ceremony, he attacked the officer supervising him. He was released in 2013 after serving 10 years out of his 18-year sentence. Despite spending most of his teenage and young adult life in prison, he soon committed his worst crimes after he left prison.
We got 2 parties inside the vehicle, appear to be shot in the head. And can you send a squad to our location?
A month after he left prison, the bodies of his first 2 victims were found. His third victim, Curtis Bradford, was someone that Jenkins had met in prison. Information also revealed that he had taken a picture with Bradford a day before his body was found. On August 29, 2013, Jenkins was arrested because he had made terroristic threat charges. It was during the investigation that evidence placed Jenkins close to Kruger's murder location. 3 days after he was arrested, Jenkins confessed to murdering all 4 people. What was bizarre was that he claimed to have sacrificed his victims to Apophis, an ancient Egyptian deity. Despite this, he was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of robbery, 5 counts of use of a deadly weapon to commit a felony, and 6 counts of possession of a deadly weapon.
Is one of the worst killing sprees in the history of this state. Each one of these murders was a deliberate and planned act.
Jenkins scored a 68 on his IQ test and he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Despite this, more doctors said he was faking psychotic symptoms and was eventually judged capable of receiving punishment. So, in May 2017, Jenkins was given 4 death sentences and 450 years in prison.
Soviet resurrection. Russia, get dead.
In court, Jenkins displayed many bizarre actions, including speaking in tongues and laughing. During his sentencing, he showed pretty much no reaction and just looked on behind sunglasses. He appeared with multiple tattoos and mutilations on his face, tongue, body, and pubic area. While he was awaiting his sentence, he tried to commit suicide more than 10 times. Where Nico Jenkins shot people in the head on alleged instructions, Jared Chance dismembered a helpless victim for reasons unknown.
Alright. I really can't say much, but I don't even really know what to say.
On November 29, 2018, 31-year-old Ashley Young went missing. One of the people that her mother asked about her whereabouts was Jared Chance, who had been living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Ashley and Chance had just started a romantic relationship when Chance invited her to his home. He lived on the upper floor of a 2-story building. After a while, they went out for drinks. That was the last time anyone heard from Ashley. Ashley was supposed to meet her mother to complete the process of moving into a new apartment, and when she didn't show up, her mother became worried. Because Christine, Ashley's mother, knew that she was going to visit Jared, she texted him asking where she was. Jared replied to Christine saying that Ashley just texted him from a friend's phone and that she would call any second. Ashley never called and Christine started looking for her daughter. The search would come to an end when a horrible discovery was made in Jared's home. 2 days after Ashley went missing, Mario, Jared's neighbor, noticed a horrible smell coming from the basement of the house he shared with Jared. To his horror, he found blood leaking from a black tarp and quickly called the police. The police found a human torso, 22 caliber cartridges, and saw blades. When Mario saw this, he told the police that Jared owned a 22 caliber gun and that Ashley's car had been parked out front for a while. Investigators entered Jared's apartment and found 2 legs with no feet and 2 arms with no hands. A DNA test identified these parts as Ashley's. They matched the torso that was found in the basement.
Police on the search warrant! Come to the door! We're gonna... Okay, the tarp is laying on the stairs, about the last 3 stairs.
Jared Chance was arrested shortly after. Soon enough, his parents were brought in too after a bloody shower curtain and Ashley's blood were found in their car. Jared had asked for his parents' help after he killed and dismembered her. It seemed that they accompanied him to dispose of her head, hands, and feet. These parts were never found. Even though Jared was offered a minimum sentence, he refused to talk about what he did to Ashley or where the rest of Ashley's parts were.
What happened to Ashley Young?
I can't even talk about it.
You can't talk about it because you're so emotional, or?
I just can't,
Jared refused to do any of these, so he was charged with murder and dismemberment of Ashley Young. In court, Mario told the court his story.
Once I come back up to the stairs, there's a tarp laying there, and it's like just a stream of blood out of it.
Jared Chance was sentenced to a minimum of 100 years to a maximum of 200 years in prison.
Now, I cry 7 days a week. 7! My mind never stops. Never!
Ashley's mother was full of rage as she gave her victim impact statement. Jared stood lifeless as she talked. Jared's parents were also sentenced to 45 days in prison. While it seems that Jared Chance's action was designed for one person, Daryl Brooks committed the biggest hit and run in history.
Mr. Brooks,
now you want to sit up here.
Do not interrupt me or you will be removed to the other courtroom.
And now you want to sit up here.
Stop.
And try to add something in that you know for a fact never even happened.
On November 21st, 2021, Daryl Brooks drove an SUV through an annual Christmas parade in Wisconsin. He killed 6 people and injured 62 others. Before the attack, Daryl already had an extensive criminal record dating back to 1999. Brooks had been sentenced to 2 years in jail when he was just 17 years old for battery. He was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. On the day of the attack, Brooks drove a red SUV into the Christmas parade and ran over multiple people while the event was being live streamed. In an attempt to stop him, a police officer fired at the vehicle without success. Brooks's goal was to hit as many people as possible, so he moved in a zigzag pattern through the court. He killed 5 women, 1 man, and an 8-year-old child. Daryl Brooks was arrested later that day. He was soon charged with 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, and 6 counts of hit and run causing death. His trial soon began. In a pre-trial hearing, Brooks requested self-representation. During his trial, Brooks declared himself a sovereign citizen, saying he did not consent to being recognized by his name. Multiple times, Brooks was led out of the courtroom because he refused to comply with decorum. He continually got into heated arguments with the judge and refused to comply with instructions.
Furthermore, I object to that. I'm not because that's a lie.
Let him
at
finish.
the end of the day,
Let him finish.
If we don't open the
Mr.
door on that
Brooks.
nonsense, we want to make a record and not be accurate. So let's be accurate all on the record since you think you know so much.
Daryl kept up this behavior throughout his trial proceedings. He pleaded not guilty to all charges that were brought against him. A year after this horrific sentence, Daryl Brooks was sentenced. A jury found Brooks guilty on all 76 counts stemming from the attack, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Daryl E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 2 of the information. Did the defendant commit first-degree intentional homicide while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes.
While he was receiving his guilty verdict, Brooks had his head in his hands but showed no other visible reactions. His sentencing was different. During his final sentencing, he interrupted the judge multiple times despite the warnings he was given. He eventually had to be removed from the courtroom.
Stop.
And try to add something in that you know for a fact never even happened. You want to sit up here and talk about who has grace and all this. You talking about someone with 5 kids that don't have custody.
You need to stop right now or you will be removed.
Remove me then.
Ultimately, Daryl Brooks was sentenced to 762.5 years in prison, as well as 6 consecutive life sentences. The actions of Daryl Brooks were deadly. The actions of serial killer Richard Ramirez were horrific beyond words.
And delivered to the warden of the state penitentiary in San Quentin, California, within 10 days from the date hereof, in the usual course of his duties.
From April 1984 to August 1985, the Night Stalker terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area, murdering at least 14 people during that period. This killer was Richard Ramirez. He had a horrible childhood and suffered constant mistreatment from his father. He developed brain damage and started using substances at age 10. He soon became fascinated with killing after he saw his cousin, who was a war veteran, kill his wife in front of him. When Ramirez moved to the Bay Area, he would often break into homes and steal to support his substance addiction. He soon began to commit more horrific crimes. On April 10, 1984, Ramirez murdered 9-year-old Mei Liang in the basement of his apartment building. He beat, strangled, and the little girl before stabbing her to death. He then hung her body from a pipe by her blouse. This was the beginning of many murders. Between June 1984 and August 1985, Ramirez and killed at least 9 women, another 10 women, and burgled more than 20 homes. He also shot and killed at least 20 people in total during his spree as a serial killer. He had a wide variety of weapons, including handguns, various types of knives, a machete, a tire iron, and a claw hammer. He punched, pistol whipped, and strangled many of his victims, both with his hands and, in one instant, a ligature, stomped at least one victim to death in her sleep, and tortured another by shocking her with a live electrical cord. Ramirez was soon identified after he attempted a burglary. After a cast of Ramirez's footprint and fingerprint were obtained from a stolen Toyota, his mugshot was released to the public. On August 30th, 1985, Ramirez took a bus to Tucson, Arizona, to visit his brother, unaware he had become the lead story in virtually every major newspaper and television news program across California. When he eventually realized that he was wanted, he tried to steal a car and escape. However, he was caught, severely beaten, and restrained till police came and took him away.
Found the offenses of murder to be first degree, the jury having returned findings of the special circumstances alleged in the information under California Penal Code Section 190.2.
He was charged with 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. On November 7, 1989, he was sentenced to death in the gas chamber. In court, he seemed remorseless, playful even.
In counts 2, 5, 8, 9, 11, 13, 20, 24.
As he was being led away, he said something bizarre. He said, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." The trial cost $1.8 million, which at the time made it the most expensive murder trial in the history of California. While Ramirez was awaiting trial, he somehow gained fans who started writing him letters and paying visits. He also got married in 1996. He appealed his death sentence in 2006 and 2007, but they were rejected. In 2009, evidence revealed that he was responsible for the murder of his first victim. This information had initially been unknown. Ramirez would not be executed because he died on June 7, 2013, after suffering from B-cell lymphoma. His body was cremated.
A recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, contribute to a person's frustration.
In a rare interview, he talked about how serial killers came to be, but refused to talk about his crimes. Next, while Quenton Smith's horrific crime left a lasting impact, the twists that follow in his story are even more disturbing.
That moment that he's formed the purpose to kill those 2 officers, because he's not going back to jail.
In Columbus, Ohio, on February 10, 2018, officers Eric Joring and Anthony Tony Morelli responded to a domestic violence incident in Westerville. A woman had called 911 asking for help before hanging up. The woman, who was called Candace, who was married to a man named Quenton Smith. When the officers got to the scene of the incident, it was discovered that Quenton Smith had punched and choked his wife. He had accused her of cheating on him before choking her until she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she called 911 crying, but didn't say anything because she was scared her husband would hear her talking to the authorities. When the police officers got there, Smith became enraged that Candace had called the police and taken the guns he had put in the couch, and this caused a tussle between the 3 men. Smith shot Joring and Morelli when they got there. He shot Morelli once in the chest, which went through his heart and lungs, before shooting Joring 3 times in his arms and head. Joring died immediately, and Morelli died later that day in the hospital. Smith was also shot 5 times, but he survived. Quenton was charged in court with 2 counts of aggravated murder and possession of a gun. Quenton was prohibited from having a gun at the time he shot and killed the officers. Due to the nature of the incident, Quenton's murder trial lasted 2 years. This case also garnered much public attention and sparked outrage from people across the country. Both former President Donald Trump and Governor John Kasich commented on the brutal way Quenton murdered these men. During the trial, one of the witnesses and a fellow police officer, Timothy Ray, looked visibly distraught and was struggling not to break down.
As I was going past the first department, another shot went off.
Another police officer who was a witness at the crime scene, Stacy Pentecost, could not control her tears as she gave her testimony to the court.
Officer Merley was laying on the floor, holding himself up by his elbow.
It was an emotional time for many of the people present in court. The families of Morelli and Joring were also allowed to give victim impact statements. This case became the first one where the families of the victim were allowed to give impact statements during the trial of a capital offense. The prosecutor and the defending lawyer fought hard in court to lay their cases and arguments before the judge and the jury. It all came down to those two parties because they were the only ones who could control the outcome of the case.
We, the jury, being deadlocked and unable to agree on whether the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating factors beyond a reasonable doubt, hereby unanimously return the following life sentence on count 1.
Quenton showed no emotion whatsoever as the jury read his sentence to him. Even though he was eligible for the death penalty, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Regardless of the punishment, this put an end to a 2-year-long trial. The victims were honored with highways dedicated to their memory. If you're enraged by Quenton Smith's complete lack of remorse or emotion, just wait till you see how Dante Morris reacts to his sentencing.
That's count 1 for the first-degree premeditated murder of David Curtis. The court imposes a sentence of death.
Dante Morris has been regarded as the Tampa Bay Killer for more than 13 years now. Morris murdered 5 to 7 people between May 18th and June 29, 2010 in Tampa, Florida. Morris had killed 21-year-old Derek Anderson, 25-year-old Harold Wright, and 42-year-old Rodney Jones due to substance trades gone wrong. He killed these men between May 18th and June 8th. As such, Morris became a wanted man by the Tampa Police Department for the murder of these men. Barely 20 days after he killed these men, police officers Jeffrey Kokab and David Curtis spotted Morris and attempted to arrest him because the car he was in had missing license plates. He had been a passenger in a car driven by his girlfriend, Courtney Brantley, when they were stopped by the officers in East Tampa. When Officer Curtis tried to run checks on the car, he discovered that Morris was already wanted for check fraud in Jacksonville. When Curtis discovered this, he called Kokab for assistance. Unfortunately, when the officers told Morris to put his hands behind his back, he responded by shooting the officers in the head with a concealed weapon before running away from the crime scene on foot. A witness immediately called the police and a large group of them started searching for Morris. The murder had been recorded on the dash cam of the patrol car Curtis drove, and it was from there that they identified Morris. They also identified Morris's girlfriend who fled the scene, leaving the car before hiding in an apartment. Due to the gravity of this case and how it was the worst thing that had happened to the Tampa Police Department, a large-scale manhunt was organized to search for Morris. The search for him became the biggest manhunt to happen in Tampa's history. 1,000 officers from 22 agencies were deployed to search for him. Other agents included SWAT teams, armored vehicles, dog teams, and helicopters with thermal imagers, as well as ATF officials were dispatched to look for Morris. They ended up searching about 300 homes during the manhunt. A reward for clues leading to his arrest was increased to $100,000, and on July 2nd, 2010, Dante Morris was arrested at a law firm in Tampa before he was taken to an isolated cell. This case garnered huge media attention after the manhunt was broadcast. Morris was charged to court for a host of offenses. He was charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder, resistance to arrest, attempted armed robbery, escape, car theft, drug possession, and dangerous bodily harm. It was later revealed that he had killed 2 more African American people in Tampa before the officers. He was first tried in July 2012 for the murder of 42-year-old Rodney Jones, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In November 2013, he was eventually tried for the murder of officers Kokab and Curtis. Convicting him took only 4 hours because there was proof of the murder from the dashcam. During the trial, the wife of Jeffrey Kokab, Sarah Kokab, gave a victim impact statement, and she talked about how Morris took her husband from her. It made it worse for her because Jeffrey and Sarah were expecting a baby. A month after Morris murdered the officers, their daughter was stillborn, and this made Sarah's voice shake as she talked.
I just can't, I can't fathom him being.
Dante Morris's aunt was also put on the stand, and she wept uncontrollably as she said she believed that Morris was guilty of these crimes.
As to count 2 for the first-degree premeditated murder of Jeffrey Kokab, the court imposes a sentence of death.
The jury convicted him of double murder, and in May 2014, he was sentenced to death. Morris showed no reaction as the jury read his sentence. He received 2 more death penalties between 2014 and 2015, when he was transferred to death row by Judge William Funty. At least Dante Morris didn't ambush and kill cops brutally and painfully like this scumbag.
According to the prosecution, these were executions. Both victims were shot multiple times, but Elliot Knox claims he had nothing to do with the shootings.
On December 16, 2021, 2 people were murdered within hours of each other in Baltimore before the day ended. The first victim was police officer Keona Hawley, who had been an active member of the Baltimore Police Department. The second was a 27-year-old Justin Johnson. Both victims were shot and killed in what was called an ambush murder. The perpetrator? Elliot Knox and Trayvon Shaw. The most baffling part of this case was that it seemed that there was no motive for the murders these 2 committed. On the day of the tragic murders, Keona Hawley had been sitting in her patrol car in Curtis Bay when she was shot multiple times from different angles. Barely 90 minutes later, the men drove to Yale Heights and shot Johnson 6 times in the back while he was also sitting in his car. Hawley was immediately placed on life support due to the severity of her injuries, but unfortunately, she died 8 days later on the 23rd of December. The search for a suspect began, and eventually, security camera surveillance, cell phone, and DNA evidence put both Knox and Shaw at the scene of both shootings. Later, during the investigation, 2 guns were found in the house, one of which was used to kill both Hawley and Johnson. Knox was arrested shortly after and was charged to court on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. It was later revealed by the prosecution that the motive behind Johnson's murder was that he had been owing Shaw $100. A shocking testimony was made by Knox, which gave the impression of a motive. Knox told the court and the family of the victim that Shaw claimed that Hawley was a member of the Black Guerrilla family, an infamous gang, and that the gang wanted her out of the picture. According to Knox, Hawley and more than 100 Baltimore police officers had formed an illegal alliance with the BGF, and they would often give the BGF names and identities of substance dealers around Baltimore for them to rob. He also claimed that officers would take substances and weapons from dealers to use as props so that the Baltimore Mayor's Safe Streets program would look more effective and relative. However, the sister of Keona Hawley, LaWanda Sykes, said that this was a lie and that there was no way Hawley was a gang member. These wild allegations were also disregarded by the jury because they felt it was defamation. Evidence also showed that Elliot must have been the closest to Hawley's patrol car when he and Shaw murdered her. The father of Knox's second victim, Harold Johnson, said, "I wish there was another way of penalizing these guys because Justin and Officer Hawley are gone. And the thing is, the taxpayer has got to foot the bill for these guys for the rest of their lives, and I wish that there was another way we could penalize them." 27-year-old Justin Johnson was a father of 5 children before he was murdered by Knox. The prosecutor was reported to have said the following after the sentencing of Knox. Attorney Ivan Bates said, "Today's sentencing of Elliot Knox conveys an unequivocal message that acts of violence, which have afflicted our communities, will not be tolerated. This sentence ensures that Mr. Knox will never be able to harm anyone in Baltimore again." At another trial, the prosecution told the jury that the 2 men had targeted Hawley and executed her. According to him, they knew who and where she was, so they murdered her while she was working.
Factor, and one of the biggest things that we want to know is the why this happened. I will not rest. I will not be satisfied until I know who and why this was done to my sister.
In March 2024, Knox was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences for the murder of the 2 victims. His emotions were said to have ranged from defiance to accusatory. He reportedly kept trying to avoid taking the blame and kept trying to justify his actions. He told the court, with the help of his lawyer, that he had only been an accessory because Shaw had told him to hide the guns. This didn't stop the jury from sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Well, after we killed this police officer, let's go across town to take someone's son. No one wakes up in the morning and thinks those things. Someone sent them to do it.
After the sentencing, the sister of Officer Hawley said they still needed to know the reason behind her sister's murder. She insisted that she would not rest until she knew who ordered her death and why. Next, we turn to the unsettling case of Kelsey Turner. Her crime shocked many, as it revealed a dark side that few could have predicted.
Judy was worried about this woman, 25-year-old Playboy and Maxim model Kelsey Turner. Judy says Kelsey was extorting money from Dr. Burchard.
Kelsey Turner was once a prominent figure in the adult modeling industry, appearing on the covers of Playboy Italia and Maxim, and amassing a considerable following on social media. She spent her time between Salinas, California and Las Vegas, Nevada, working to build her career. However, as the modeling industry proved to be highly unpredictable, opportunities began to dry up, and Turner faced significant financial struggles. By this point, she was also a single mother.
Burchard had a history of helping others and engaging with young, attractive girls he met online, like Kelsey. That's according to his friend, who did not want to be identified.
In the late 2010s, Turner entered a financial agreement with Dr. Thomas Burchard, a 71-year-old child psychiatrist. Over several years, Burchard provided her with over $750,000, covering expenses like her car insurance and the rent for her Las Vegas home. According to Judy Earp, Burchard's fiancée, many people asked for the doctor's help, but Kelsey was different. Judy claimed that Kelsey had often requested money under the guise of needing it for her son's medication or other emergencies.
Judy Earp, his girlfriend of 17 years, was back at their home in California and sensed the doctor was in trouble.
By early 2019, Judy, who suspected that Burchard was experiencing the early stages of dementia, urged him to end the relationship. Burchard agreed and planned to confront Turner on March 1, 2019, to tell her he would no longer provide financial support. He never returned from that trip.
Maybe I ought to just come home on the next flight.
Judy Earp reported Burchard missing, prompting an investigation. On March 7th, police discovered Burchard's abandoned Mercedes-Benz in the Las Vegas desert. Inside, they found blood, gloves, and a baseball bat. The trunk contained a body wrapped in bedsheets, identified as Dr. Burchard through a credit card found at the scene. During the autopsy, the medical examiner concluded that Burchard had died from blunt force trauma, ruling his death a homicide.
Repeatedly that these are not, the kind of people you want to be associating with.
Detectives interviewed Judy, who shared details about Burchard's plans to cut ties with Kelsey. When they searched Kelsey's home, they found evidence of blood and an attempt to clean up the scene. Using cell phone data, authorities tracked Kelsey and her roommates, Diana Pina and John Kennison, to the Rio Hotel. By the time officers arrived, the three were gone.
Were living and where investigators believe Dr. Burchard was murdered. Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, told a grand jury that Kennison attacked Dr. Burchard with a baseball bat.
The investigation took a key turn when Burchard's journal was found, containing entries about accusations Kelsey made against him involving inappropriate images of children. Despite these allegations, no evidence of such material was found on Burchard's electronic devices. Judy stated that the accusations had deeply troubled Burchard due to his professional background.
Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and is expected to testify at their trials.
Kelsey, Diana, and John were eventually located. Fingerprints from Burchard's car matched those of Diana and John. Diana admitted to police that Kelsey had been upset when she learned Burchard planned to cut her off financially. She said Kelsey had ordered John to confront Burchard, which led to John fatally hitting him with a baseball bat. John then drove Burchard's car with the body in the trunk and abandoned it in the desert.
It looks like she received an own recognizance release, so she's getting some pretty preferential treatment here, and it's going to be interesting to see if the jury thinks, in fact, she could be the bad person in this.
Diana Pena agreed to a plea deal for being an accessory to murder and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. John Kennison pled guilty to murder and received an 18 to 45-year prison sentence in 2022. Kelsey Turner took an Alford plea, acknowledging the strength of the evidence against her without admitting guilt. She was sentenced to 10 to 25 years in prison and will be eligible for parole when she is 36 years old in 2029. During her court proceedings, Kelsey Turner's behavior drew attention, as she was often seen smiling and posing for the cameras, which many found surprising given the serious charges she faced.
3.75 years
as she has already spent incarcerated and still shows no sign of rehabilitation.
While some interpreted her actions as an attempt to appear confident or maintain composure, others saw them as evidence of indifference to the crime and its consequences. Currently, Kelsey Turner is serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Nevada. If you thought Kelsey Turner's case was shocking, prepare yourself for an even more unsettling story. Samantha Walford's actions blurred the line between betrayal and violence in ways that few could have predicted.
Everything he could to keep the family financially afloat. He was working 2 jobs. She was not working.
Ernest Ernie Ibarra Jr. and Samantha Walford began dating in 2008, quickly forming a bond that Ernie believed would last a lifetime. Samantha, who had given birth to twins at 19 with her high school boyfriend, seemed to be a perfect match for Ernie, and their relationship grew stronger as they added to their family. In 2011, they welcomed a second set of twins, followed by another child in 2013. By then, their household had grown to a total of 7, and Ernie worked tirelessly to provide for his wife and children, taking on 2 jobs, one at a bat manufacturing company during the day, and another at Little Caesars in the evenings.
Hey YouTubers! Today a lot of shit pissed me off, so you guys get to listen to it.
His dad's not having a whole lot to do with this pregnancy, and that sucks.
As Ernie balanced work and family life, Samantha turned to social media to help make ends meet. She started a YouTube channel, sharing stories about her life, her parenting experiences, and her aspirations. Through her channel, Samantha spoke candidly about the challenges of being a young mother of 5 and showcased her interests and personality.
It was her only focus, and her family was really left to the wayside.
What do you think of me making YouTube videos? Well?
While Samantha's content began to build her online following, Ernie's family noticed that she was changing. Ernie's sister, Abigail, began to fear that Samantha's focus on her channel was taking a toll on her family responsibilities. Abigail observed that Samantha was spending more time creating content and seeking online attention, and less time caring for her children. This shift in priorities caused friction between Samantha and Ernie, who preferred to keep a low profile and avoid the attention that Samantha craved.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
Because you got that fucking iPad in your hands.
Where?
At least you're paying attention. But only because it's a fucking hilarious ass episode.
Their relationship was further strained by issues of trust and jealousy. Ernie's passion for gaming became a point of contention when Samantha discovered that Ernie's online avatar had married a female character. This incident angered Samantha, who felt that Ernie had not yet given her the commitment of an engagement ring, despite their 5 children and years of partnership. Despite these challenges, Ernie proposed to Samantha in 2014, and the couple tried to move forward.
The silence that provides a new clue.
Did you hear him say anything else besides what you told us?
They said that it was because of his dad.
Because of his dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, on February 20th, 2015, everything changed. Samantha called her mother, Rosie, in a panic, claiming that intruders had broken into their home, taken Ernie, and bound her. Rosie, deeply concerned, called her sister Ginger, who rushed to Samantha and Ernie's house. Ginger found Samantha tied up and restrained, and the scene was unsettling, with signs of forced entry and a damaged front door indicating a struggle.
It had just happened to be my mom.
I think you know exactly who did this. I think the story's made up about your daddy, his daddy, and stuff like that.
Emergency responders treated Samantha at the scene before she was taken to the Titus County Sheriff Department for questioning. Samantha told detectives that she and Ernie were asleep when the break-in occurred shortly after 1 a.m. She claimed that the intruders barged into their bedroom, one holding a knife to her throat while another dragged Ernie away. Samantha said that during this chaotic moment, she was brought downstairs and the men taunted her by striking Ernie in the face with a gun. After the intruders left, Samantha managed to free herself and call her mother for help.
Okay, see, I knew. You know, Sam, you know I'm not here lying to you. You know I know.
The only other thing I don't even know I know.
Okay.
Detectives pressed Samantha for descriptions of the intruders, but she said they were all wearing black clothing and masks, preventing her from identifying them. Samantha did acknowledge that she and Ernie had a difficult past, including an arrest in 2014 for alleged domestic violence, but she insisted that things had been improving between them since then.
There's more happening here and that they need to dive deeper.
What did you say when he said he's going to take care of that problem?
I just laughed at him. I thought he was joking.
As the investigation unfolded, Samantha brought up a potential secret: Jonathan Kyle Sanford, known as Johnny Red. She claimed that she had shared details of Ernie's alleged harm with Johnny, who might have taken it as a reason to intervene. Sanford, a former inmate with a history of criminal activity, was brought in for questioning. He admitted to being involved in the plot to harm Ernie, revealing that he had recruited 2 accomplices, Octavius Lamar Rhymes and Jose Antonio Ponce, to carry out the plan.
She had previously described that there were 3 of them, so I think law enforcement believed that there was at least one more person involved.
Police also apprehend Octavius Lamar Rhymes.
Sanford confessed that he, Rhymes, and Ponce had ambushed Ernie and taken him to a secluded area in Camp County, Texas. There, they shot Ernie in the head, leaving his body in a remote spot. Investigators discovered evidence of communication between Samantha and Rhymes, including text messages outlining the plot to eliminate Ernie. Samantha, Sanford, Rhymes, and Ponce were all arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping and murder.
Oh, you know, Sam, you know I'm not here lying to you. You know I know.
The only other thing I don't even know I know.
Okay.
But it's a suspicion.
Okay.
In April 2016, Sanford and Ponce accepted plea deals and were each sentenced to 50 years in prison. Rhymes's trial began in December 2016, and he was found guilty on all charges, receiving a 93-year sentence. Samantha's trial started in September 2017, where the evidence and testimonies revealed the extent of her involvement. She was found guilty and received a 99-year sentence for murder, to be served consecutively with her 50-year sentence for kidnapping.
Money was a constant struggle. You know, her husband was working several part-time jobs.
I've had a lot of people stop me and ask about how I deal with things. Honestly, it's hard.
Although the public reaction to Samantha Walford's sentence was one of relief, it was ultimately a tragedy for everyone involved. Her 5 children are now left without both a mother and a father. They now face an uncertain future. Samantha Walford's calculated betrayal ended in a devastating loss. But the next case takes us to an even more harrowing tragedy. Claire Miller, a teenager whose shocking actions against her own sister left a family and community reeling.
She stabbed her sister Helen, who had cerebral palsy, on the morning of February 22, 2021. Her parents testified at trial that they had lost Helen and didn't want to lose Claire as well to prison.
In the early morning hours of February 22, 2021, the Manheim Township Police Department was called to the Miller family home after 14-year-old Claire Miller, who had an active TikTok presence, made a 911 call, admitting that she had killed her sister. When the officers arrived at the scene, they found Claire outside, standing in the snow with blood on her pajama pants. Claire led the officers inside, directing them to the bedroom where Helen Miller, 19 years old, lay lifeless. Helen, who had been born with cerebral palsy, relied on a wheelchair for mobility and was unable to walk. The Miller family had adapted their home to meet Helen's needs, ensuring that she had a safe and comfortable space to live.
A teen accused of killing her sister will be staying in Lancaster County until her trial. 16-year-old Claire Miller will be tried as an adult. The judge determined Miller will stay in Lancaster County Youth.
Claire was taken into custody immediately. Under Pennsylvania law, homicide is not considered a juvenile crime, meaning that Claire, despite her age, had to be charged as an adult. This legal requirement was not a decision made lightly, as it involved treating a young teenager with the same legal process reserved for adults charged with serious offenses.
Claire Miller was a kid who had it all but was obsessed with homicide. Citing thousands of text messages she sent a friend expressing a desire to harm someone, saying even though she loved her sister Helen, she stabbed her to death.
The legal process that followed focused heavily on Claire's mental health. She was found to have been experiencing a mental health crisis at the time of the incident. In Pennsylvania, third-degree murder is defined as an unintentional killing that results from reckless or depraved actions. It is distinct from first-degree murder, which requires premeditation, and second-degree murder, which involves killing occurring during the commission of another serious crime.
Claire Miller was sentenced to 12.5 to 40 years in prison, pleading guilty to third-degree murder. Lancaster County judge overlooking the case determined.
In 2023, Claire, now 16, pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. This plea was significant because it indicated that Claire accepted responsibility for her actions, but did not admit to premeditation or intent to kill. By pleading guilty, she acknowledged that her behavior showed a disregard for human life, which resulted in her sister's death.
Miller was mentally ill but not mentally disabled when imposing the sentence. Back on February 22nd of 2021, Manheim Township Police discovered Miller's 19-year-old sister.
During the sentencing hearing, District Attorney Heather Adams described the case as particularly tragic, emphasizing that Helen's vulnerability and Claire's actions made the situation even more painful. Heather Adams noted that while the mental health crisis Claire experienced was a factor, it did not erase her responsibility for Helen's death. The prosecutor pointed out that the court needed to balance the need for accountability with Claire's young age and mental state at the time of the crime.
Via video conference,
She's charged with killing her disabled sister Helen in their Manheim Township home in February.
The judge ultimately sentenced Claire to 12.5 to 40 years in prison. This decision aimed to hold her accountable for what had happened, but also left room for the possibility of rehabilitation over time. Claire's guilty plea and the subsequent sentencing highlighted the complex challenge of balancing justice with compassion, particularly in cases involving minors and mental health issues.
In Manheim Township, called police a little after 1 a.m. and said she had killed her sister. Officers responded to the home, where Claire pointed them to a bedroom.
For the Miller family, this case was devastating on multiple fronts. They had already endured the unimaginable pain of losing Helen, who had been cherished and an integral part of their lives. The grief of that loss was compounded by the reality that Claire would now face years of imprisonment. Further, the family was left to try to come to terms with the painful contradiction of loving Claire and mourning Helen, knowing that the actions of one had changed their entire family forever. Claire Miller's tragic actions against her own family were heartbreaking, but the next case reveals a chilling and violent act of rebellion. Isabella Guzman, a young woman whose horrifying attack on her mother shocked everyone who heard the details. In 2013, in the quiet suburban community of Aurora, Colorado, 18-year-old Isabella Guzman, a seemingly ordinary teenager, murdered her mother, Yunmi Hoy, in a horrific act of violence that left even seasoned investigators stunned. Yunmi Hoy, a 47-year-old mother, was stabbed more than 70 times in an attack so frenzied it left 79 wounds across her neck, face, and torso. The crime wasn't just tragic, it was deeply unsettling.
And that her mom was concerned enough that she called police on August 28th. They came to the house and told Isabella that her mom could kick her out for her behavior. It seemed to calm her down.
The night of the murder began with simmering tension in the family home. According to accounts, Yunmi and Isabella had been arguing for weeks, their relationship strained to the breaking point. That evening, Isabella's stepfather was home when he heard the commotion upstairs. When he rushed to investigate, he found a horrifying scene. Isabella standing over Yunmi's lifeless body, the floor covered in blood. In a state of shock, her stepfather could do little as Isabella fled the house.
Guzman's stepdad heard a thump, ran upstairs, and saw blood oozing out from under the bathroom door. Court documents indicate that he later saw Guzman exit the bathroom with a knife in her hand.
Law enforcement quickly arrived on the scene, but Yunmi Hoy was beyond saving. Officers and paramedics described the scene as one of the most gruesome they had ever encountered. A manhunt for Isabella began immediately. She was found the next day and taken into custody, charged with her mother's murder. As the details of the case unfolded, the story took an even darker and more complex turn. In the months leading up to the murder, Isabella had been battling severe mental health issues. During her trial, court-appointed doctors revealed that Isabella had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition that had warped her perception of reality for years. At the time of the attack, Isabella believed her mother was not Yunmi, but a figure from her delusions named Cecilia. In her mind, she was on a mission to kill Cecilia to save the world from some imagined catastrophe. The defense presented a chilling piece of evidence to support Isabella's delusional state. A threatening letter Isabella had sent to her mother before the murder. It read, "You will pay," but was addressed to Cecilia. This bizarre detail painted a picture of a young woman trapped in a dangerous spiral of paranoia and confusion. Her erratic behavior during court hearings only deepened the unease. At times, she appeared detached, staring blankly into the cameras, her expression unnervingly calm for someone accused of such a heinous crime.
The 18-year-old smirked at the camera as she stood up and walked to the defense table this afternoon, her arms and legs shackled. After the judge read the complaint against her, she looked over.
Both prosecutors and the defense agreed on one thing. Isabella was incapable of distinguishing right from wrong at the time of the murder. The court accepted her plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Instead of prison, Isabella was committed to a state psychiatric hospital, where she would remain until deemed no longer a danger to herself or the public, a period that could span years or even her entire lifetime.
I was abused at home by my family for many years. My parents are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I left the religion when I was 14.
For Isabella, the years that followed became a journey of reckoning and recovery. 7 years after her sentencing, she broke her silence in an interview with CBS News' Rick Salinger. Speaking with a calm demeanor, Isabella expressed her desire to rejoin society. She admitted that she had not been herself the night of the murder and credited medication and therapy with helping her regain her sense of reality.
He asked me if I wanted to go in there and look through to get some clothing, so I did. The other patient left, and he went in there and shut the door behind him.
In the interview, she also shared a more personal side of her story. Isabella claimed her struggles began long before the crime, pointing to years of emotional turmoil and harm within her family. She described feeling increasingly isolated after choosing to step away from the Jehovah's Witness faith as a teenager, a decision that created a rift with her family. According to Isabella, the lack of understanding and support at home only deepened her mental health struggles, leaving her vulnerable to the delusions that would ultimately drive her to violence. As of now, Isabella remains under the care of the state, her future uncertain. The chilling courtroom reactions of these psycho killers expose the depths of their darkness. But there's even more to uncover. The next video on screen dives into jaw-dropping cases that push the limits of insanity and justice. If you thought this was shocking, just wait until you see what's next. Don't miss it.